And I wanted to start, Richard, by asking you sort of, in the context of evolution, what something from nothing means to you.
Charles Darwin solved one of the greatest riddles that the human mind has ever solved, which is how you get something from nothing, in the sense of how you get the immense complexity and diversity and beauty and elegance of life, and perhaps above all, how you get the powerful illusion of design that life shows, starting not quite from nothing, but starting from extreme simplicity.
But I think you're not being fair to Darwin. I think in a sense it's something from nothing. I mean, completely nothing. In the sense that every time a new... Take humans. We weren't around perhaps more than maybe 5 to 10 million years ago. And so, in a sense, every time a new species is created, it's something from nothing.
Well, it's not from nothing, because it's from an antecedent species, and even the evolutionary process, the process that Darwin discovered, didn't start from nothing. It had to start from, well, a reasonably complicated chemical beginning, which was the first self-replicating molecule. You can't, I mean, natural selection can't get going until you have genetics, and so you've got to have genetics. And that's not a trivial problem, and it's a problem that actually hasn't yet been solved. No, you have to start from a genetics, and that's one of the big gaps in our knowledge at the moment. Nobody knows how that started.
That the origin of life itself, that is the creation of something from nothing.
Yeah, the Earth is about 4.5 billion years old, and we don't know when life began, but probably after about 500 million years, but probably around about 4 billion years. For the next couple of billion years, there were nothing but bacteria. And then, so life that you couldn't see without a microscope. And then life started getting sort of big and interesting, really only about 500 million years ago, at the time of the Cambrian explosion. So biology, as I said, hands over to chemistry as we push back. Round about 4 billion
back in that
years.
moment, which and it's clear we don't yet understand how that transition occurs. But it seems to me, if you wanted to think that moment is a perfect example of how the laws of nature can create something from nothing, namely life from non-life, which is a dramatic change.
It's a dramatic change, and it was the creation of genetics. That was the key point. The creation, by the laws of chemistry, of the first gene. And it probably wasn't DNA, by the way. It would have been something simpler than DNA. DNA has been called a high-tech replicator, a high-tech genetic molecule.
This one discovery, which is really the reason I wrote the new book in some sense, the most inexplicable discovery in the last century, the fact that empty space has energy. That if you take a region of space, get rid of all the particles and all the radiation, everything, that space weighs something. There's nothing there, but it has energy. And it's changed everything about the future of the universe and the present, and maybe we'll talk about it. But it is something that is so inexplicable. Why does empty space have the energy it does? We don't have any idea. In fact, it flies in the face of all fundamental calculations we can perform. If we perform fundamental calculations, we predict a number that's 120 orders of magnitude wrong. It's the worst prediction in all of physics, so we never used to talk about it. Is this remarkable fact that nothing is unstable, that empty space is unstable. The laws of quantum mechanics, combined with gravity, will tell you that if you have empty space there, and you wait long enough, particles will be created. And if you wait long enough, empty space will always produce a universe full of matter. And it's not a scam. There's no violation of energy conservation. It's from the fact that gravity can have negative energy as well as positive energy. Now, the problem, of course, of saying that is people say, that's not nothing.
I'd been accustomed to the idea that pushing back from biology into physics, you get back to a zone where we don't understand, and you get back to a zone where there's not nothing, but sort of a primeval simplicity. What I learned from your book, which I find stunningly exciting, is that it is literally nothing. I mean, that's what really, and as you say, even the laws of physics
and space,
you can explain.
I mean, space, you can create a universe where there's no space before.
Yeah. So I do find that it's sort of mind-numbing in a way, because it's pushing the Darwinian dream to an extreme, which biologists couldn't have dreamed of.
I want to touch on whether science is incompatible with religion in your view, and why, and I'll talk about my opinion in that regard too. But one of the things that you've set out, well, we both enjoy teaching science, and we want to, and one of my goals and your goals is to help people understand science. But I think it's fair to say that one of your purposes in doing that is to destroy religion, is it not?
Well, I love truth. I love scientific truth. And in my own field of biology, ever since Darwin, we've got a very, very long way towards understanding it. And I'm now learning that in your field, we're coming stunningly close to understanding everything. And that is such a beautiful idea, such a wonderful, exciting, exhilarating idea, that it is, I would go as far as to say, an obscenity to fill a child's mind with a parochial, small-minded, petty, medieval alternative, which has nothing going for it whatever.
It sounds like we're teaching them to convert it, but I bet in the question period we'll find we're not.
What was that quote from Stephen Weinberg that you just...
Science doesn't make it impossible to believe in God, it just makes it possible to not believe.
Yeah, I think that's too weak. In the following sense, that it doesn't just make God redundant, it doesn't just give God nothing to do, which it certainly does. I mean, biology, ever since Darwin, has left God nothing to do. And it now sounds as though physics is doing the same thing. But a God who has nothing to do is still a complex, improbable entity of exactly the kind that we spent our lives explaining. So the whole Darwinian enterprise and the whole enterprise that you're engaged in physics is to explain how we can get to things like gods and explain them. And so if you suddenly then import a god at the beginning of the universe, that's a betrayal of the entire scientific enterprise. It's not just that God's not necessary. God's an excrescence, a carbuncle on the face of science.
"85 years ago, the universe was static and eternal as far as scientists were concerned. So their picture of the universe was that we lived in a single galaxy surrounded by an eternity of empty space, that had always been that way and always would be that way. And everything changed. Of course, we discovered the universe had a beginning, which had profound significance for science and for theology, as we may talk about.